Most people think security features only exist for protection. You add a password, enable Face ID, activate fingerprint scanning, and instantly feel safer. And honestly, that makes sense. The entire purpose of these features is to create a wall between your private life and the outside world. A wall designed to keep strangers away from your messages, your photos, your banking apps, your private conversations, and everything else stored inside your device. But what if the question is not about strangers? What if the question is about authority? Because suddenly the conversation changes very quickly. Because people do not usually spend their time wondering whether Face ID can create legal problems. Most people activate it in seconds, look at the camera, move their head slightly, wait for the scan. Done. Simple. Fast. Convenient. And then life moves on. Days pass, weeks pass, months pass, and people never think about it again. Until one day they hear a question online that instantly grabs attention. Can police force you to unlock your phone with Face ID? And suddenly something changes. Because now people stop scrolling. Now they start thinking. Because this question feels different. Not because it is about technology, because it feels personal. Very personal. Because suddenly nobody is imagining some random phone anymore. People imagine their own phone, their own photos, their own messages, their own information, and suddenly the entire topic becomes real. Because privacy always feels invisible until people imagine losing it. And the strange thing is, this question sounds simple, almost too simple. Can police force Face ID? Yes or no? That should be easy, right? But once you begin looking deeper, you discover something interesting. This question is not really about Face ID at all. It becomes a conversation about something much larger: control, privacy, rights, technology, and the uncomfortable reality that technology evolves faster than law itself. Think about it. 20 years ago, this conversation barely existed. Phones looked completely different. Most people carried devices used for calls and text messages. That was it. No facial recognition, no fingerprint unlocking, no applications holding years of personal information, no digital identities, no entire lives stored inside one screen. But look where things are today. Your phone knows where you go, who you talk to, what you search, what time you sleep, what time you wake up, what you buy, what you watch, what you save, what you delete, what places you visit, and maybe the strangest thing of all, your phone remembers things you forgot long ago. Think about that for a second. Your device often remembers details your own brain no longer remembers. Messages from years ago, photos from years ago, locations from years ago, searches from years ago, conversations from years ago. Everything stored quietly, everything saved, everything waiting. Which means a smartphone stopped being a phone a long time ago. Now it is something else entirely. Now it is a digital version of a person's life. And once courts began understanding this, new problems started appearing. Because searching a phone became very different from searching a wallet, or a bag, or even a house. A house has rooms, a phone has years. Years of information, years of memories, years of behavior patterns, years of personal history. And suddenly courts had to deal with questions they had never faced before. Questions technology created, questions law never expected, because law traditionally moved slowly. Very slowly. Technology does not. Technology runs. Technology changes overnight. Technology updates every year. And law struggles to catch up. That gap created confusion, and confusion creates difficult situations. Because people started using technology before fully understanding what it meant. Face ID became popular because people loved convenience. And honestly, convenience is powerful. People love things that remove effort. People love speed. People love simple solutions. No passwords, no typing, no remembering complicated numbers. Just look at the screen. Done. Unlocked. Move on. Simple. But convenience always asks for something in return. Always. Every shortcut has a trade. Every easy solution creates another question underneath it. Because convenience and privacy sometimes pull in different directions. The easier something becomes, the more important hidden questions become. And most people never stop long enough to ask those questions until something suddenly forces them to. And that is where Face ID becomes fascinating, because now technology creates a legal debate nobody expected years ago. A debate around something people use every day without thinking. Because suddenly courts started looking at a strange question. What exactly is Face ID? Not technologically, legally. Because legal systems often separate information into categories. Some things come from your mind, other things come from your body. And surprisingly, that distinction matters more than most people realize. Think about a passcode. A passcode lives inside your memory. You know it, you remember it. Nobody else sees it. Nobody else physically observes it. The information exists mentally. Now think about your face. Your face exists physically. People see it every day. Your fingerprint exists physically. Your eyes exist physically. And suddenly a question appears. Does a face work differently under law compared to information stored inside your mind? And once that debate started, everything became complicated. Because suddenly technology created legal questions nobody expected smartphones to create. And the reality is, many people still do not understand the difference. Most people think unlocking is unlocking. Password, fingerprint, face scan, same thing. Right? Not necessarily. Because legally, those things may create completely different arguments. And that is where things become extremely interesting. Because once people start looking deeper, they realize this conversation was never only about unlocking a device. It became a debate about something much bigger, something that affects millions of people carrying smartphones every single day without even thinking about it. Because most people believe security settings only protect them from strangers, hackers, thieves, random people. But very few stop and think about situations involving legal authority. And once authority enters the conversation, people immediately begin asking difficult questions. Because people naturally want clarity, they want certainty, they want a simple answer. But technology rarely gives simple answers, especially when law becomes involved. Because law tries to fit modern technology into systems that were created long before smartphones existed. And that creates friction, a lot of friction, because the world changed faster than the rules changed. Think about how strange that really is. Human beings spent thousands of years without smartphones. Thousands. And then within a very short period of time, phones transformed into devices holding nearly every part of human life. Photos, conversations, personal records, financial information, search history, daily routines, private memories, everything compressed into one object small enough to fit inside a pocket. And suddenly, a legal system built for older realities had to understand completely new ones. Because years ago, privacy looked different. Very different. People stored information in physical places. Letters stayed inside drawers. Photographs stayed inside albums. Documents stayed inside cabinets. Memories existed in separate places. Now everything sits together. One place. One screen. One device. One scan away. And that changed the meaning of access, because access today means far more than people realize. Access does not simply mean opening a phone. Access can mean understanding behavior, patterns, habits, relationships, locations, interests, routines, entire pieces of someone's life. And when viewed that way, the conversation becomes larger than Face ID itself, much larger. Because now people are not simply asking whether a phone can unlock. Now people are asking who should have access to deeply personal information. Because information became one of the most valuable things on Earth. More valuable than most people notice. Companies want information. Platforms collect information. Applications learn information. Algorithms study information because information creates understanding. And understanding creates influence. That is why privacy discussions continue becoming larger every year. not smaller. Larger, because technology continues learning more about people. Devices recognize faces, voices, patterns, locations, behavior, and perhaps the strangest part is how quickly people become comfortable with it. Think about it. Years ago, the idea of a phone recognizing a person's face sounded almost unreal. It sounded futuristic, almost like science fiction. Now people unlock devices without thinking twice. People became comfortable extremely fast, and human beings often adapt so quickly that they stop noticing major changes happening around them. That happens constantly. Technology enters daily life slowly, feature by feature, update by update, until eventually people stop seeing something as extraordinary. It simply becomes normal. And sometimes normal things deserve more attention, because normal things shape life. Normal habits shape behavior, and behavior shapes the future. Now imagine future technology becoming even more advanced. Voice identification systems, retina recognition, behavior prediction systems, artificial intelligence capable of recognizing patterns humans never notice. Suddenly, Face ID begins looking like only the beginning, not the destination, the beginning. Because every generation creates new technology, and every generation creates new questions. Questions around privacy, questions around control, questions around personal freedom. And perhaps the biggest challenge is that legal systems constantly find themselves reacting instead of leading. Technology creates change. Then law responds. Technology creates another change. Law responds again. And the cycle repeats. Over and over, which means confusion naturally appears. Because people want immediate answers. But immediate answers rarely exist inside evolving technology. And maybe that explains why this conversation became so important. Because when people hear the question, can police force you to unlock your phone with Face ID? They think they are hearing a technology question, but maybe they are hearing something else entirely. Maybe they are hearing a question about the future, about where privacy ends, about where access begins, about how much information should exist inside devices, about who controls that information. Because once technology becomes deeply connected to identity, these questions stop becoming optional. They become necessary. And maybe the most important realization of all is this. People often worry about losing privacy in one dramatic moment, one major event, one shocking incident. But history shows something different. Privacy usually changes gradually, quietly, one permission at a time, one setting at a time, one agreement at a time, until eventually people wake up and realize the world changed while nobody was paying attention. And that is why awareness matters, because understanding technology matters. Understanding privacy matters. Understanding access matters. Not because people should fear technology, but because people should understand technology. There is a difference, a very big difference, because fear creates panic. Understanding creates control, and control begins with questions. Questions many people never ask. Questions like, what am I giving away in exchange for convenience? What information exists inside my device? Who should access it? How much access is too much? Because perhaps the biggest question was never really about Face ID. Maybe the bigger question was always about something else. Who controls your digital life? Because in a world increasingly built around information, identity, and technology, that answer may become one of the most important answers of all.